All right, let's watch this video, guys. I made an entire Destiny raid in Halo.
Hello. I made an entire Destiny raid in Halo Infinite Forge. Alone. I am not kidding. It's called Shard of Ascension, and it's a full 4 encounters just like Bungie's. You can play it with 4 to 6 people, links down below. I'm gonna elaborate on why I did this a lot, so if you just want to see the raid, skip to this time code. Still here? I knew you were cool. Alright, I should probably explain how we got here. See, back in March I decided to play all the way through Destiny 1 for the first time. No particular reason, I just have a lot of friends who played and always knew I'd like it because I like Bungie's other games. That was a good time despite its, issues. So then I picked up the Destiny 2 collection since that was on sale at the time, played through as much of that as still existed, and I liked that too. Bungie is good at making games where you shoot aliens. Who'd have guessed? I was in by this point, so naturally that friend group started bringing me along for raids. For the unacquainted, a raid, as far as Destiny is concerned, is a special in-game activity for 6 people. Basically an extremely long, difficult, and complicated co-op mission. Raids are composed of a series of encounters, usually 4, that each have their own complicated mechanics to work out and execute as a team while also dealing with hordes of enemies. They're kinda like doing an escape room while the staff throws knives at you and the building is on fire. You fight a big boss at the end, everybody's showered in loot, it's a good time all around. Best part of the game by far. Problem is, I have brainworms. I'm into level design, and I especially like doing level design for Halo games. I was the first person to do an original campaign mission in Halo Infinite Forge even. So I was immediately infatuated with Destiny's raids from a design standpoint, and given their shared lineage, my thoughts naturally drifted to Halo. What might a Halo raid look like? It was an interesting question, and I turned it over in my head for long enough that I needed to dredge it out somehow, so I wrote up a little design doc for one. It was purely hypothetical, of course. Developing a raid on your own is an obviously preposterous idea. Bungie has a whole team dedicated solely to these kinds of things, and even then, they only put out a couple a year at most. Not to mention testing. I mean, if you're making content for specifically 6 coordinated people, then you need to get 6 people together every time you want to test it properly. And raids need a lot of QA. Nobody in their right mind would attempt something like that. But then I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about it, how it'd look, how it'd play, how cool it would be. Oh no. Yeah, the voice is one, and now this exists. Took half a year to make. Massive pain, frankly. I developed everything myself, but dragging the old Xbox One out of its grave to run a second client can only go so far, so I gotta give thanks to my Destiny group, who I drafted for the testing side of things. This project was only possible thanks to them, though, from a certain point of view, it was also their fault. So that design doc, what was up with that? Well, first of all, I laid out some ground rules for how I think the format ought to be adapted to Halo. It would be easy to just do the same things Destiny does, but Halo is not Destiny, and I want this to feel legit. That means making a lot of changes to the mindset we're going in with. First of all, mechanics should be physical. Important gameplay elements should exist as physical objects, situations, and interactions, both to fit with the physicality of Halo's gameplay and to more easily convey the mechanics. That is to say, no magic buffs. Destiny raids often have you interacting with something to get an abstract buff that lets you do or see certain things. That feels fine there because the core gameplay already involves using buffs and you are a space wizard, but it would feel out of place in Halo. If anything like that must be used, it should have minimal importance and have clear visual indication to other players. On that note, I also gave myself a self-imposed challenge. No gambit or plates. Destiny raids have a lot of gambit and plates, and they would mostly be okay in Halo, but I just kinda want to avoid them out of spite. If you know—
We have a lot of gambits and like so much of Destiny. Like, I mean, there is like, you can really look at mechanics across the game and see the variations of gambits / plates. You know what I mean? So it's interesting. He's essentially nerfing himself in some ways by removing what would be an easy mechanic to create, in my opinion. But let's continue.
What I mean by this, then you understand why. If not, don't worry about it. Second, a Halo raid should lean into its sandbox. In game design terms, a sandbox is everything players can use or interact with. Weapons, vehicles, and so on. In Destiny, players bring all of this in with them. They use their own guns and abilities almost all of the time, and vehicles just don't come up much at all. Halo doesn't work that way. The level designer has tight control over what players can use, and vehicle gameplay is much more fleshed out and prominent. A good raid should make the most of that leverage to make the kinds of encounters that other games can't. On that note though, it would be wise to avoid boss fights for the most part. The Halo series has tried to implement boss fights on and off since Halo 2, but historically it has not gone well. Infinite handles them the best, but they still aren't a strong suit. Destiny's structure for raid bosses just doesn't translate either. Those are all about short damage windows where everybody hammers the boss with everything they can. DPS phases are fun because you get to flex your build in one giant blowout of burst damage, but Halo, doesn't have builds, so that's kind of a wash. Ending phases at health gates is a better fit. And finally, we should try to keep this relatively approachable. Destiny raids are for experienced and coordinated groups of hardcore players drawing from a wealth of shared knowledge. Being demanding and obtuse is a community building tool. It's something they can do because they have a lot of players and it gets those players to interact with each other more. Plus, everybody gets good loot out of the deal, so they're pretty well encouraged to figure it out. That's all well and good, but Halo isn't really structured to support that kind of complexity. Requiring comms is perfectly fine, but a competent group should be able to intuit how an encounter works after a few tries, and execution should be the main challenge. We can be a little flexible with the player count too. Destiny raids are for precisely 6 people. It's just a happy accident if you can do them with less. But Halo uses a 4-player fireteam size for all other co-op content, and I think it's reasonably tenable to design encounters such that they can scale down to that without compromising too much. 6 players is still the intended experience, but if you have 4 people, then you can knock the enemy difficulty down a notch and make it work. A lower player requirement also makes raiding parties easier to form in general, which is probably for the best at this point. My 95 theses aside, what did I actually make? A good raid needs a good setting, and I didn't think there was any better choice than the Alpha Shard. If you've seen Halo Nightfall, then you'll be familiar with this, and you have my sympathies. Long story short, it's this bit of Installation 04 that flew off into space at the end of Halo 1. Or maybe this one, or this one, I don't know, it's one of those. But it's a good candidate. Striking visual, narrative significance, everything you want out of a raid location. We also need a plot, or in this case, an excuse. Halo Infinite's Forge can do a lot of things, but storytelling is decidedly not one of them. So we're gonna go with something nice and simple. Remember Iritus? Maybe not, it's been a while. He's the brute AI that was at the center of Infinite's multiplayer story for the brief time that was around. Well, the Banished went to investigate the Alpha Shard and found a way to connect him to the old Forerunner network, and that's, bad. So go kill him. Play video game and have a fun. It would have been nice to work Iritus's announcer lines from Infection in, but Halo Studios never added them to Forge for some reason. The raid is named Shard of Ascension partially because that's what's happening, but mostly because it just sounds like a proper raid name. Content-wise, I was aiming for something roughly comparable to Deepstone Crypt, if a bit shorter in the intro. 4 encounters, no reused areas, with a couple of traversal sections sprinkled in to break up the pacing.
My man's got good taste.
How is that even possible in Forge? And the answer is narrowly. But first and foremost, a lot of boring scripting groundwork that I'm going to spare you from. Raids call for a lot of systems that Halo doesn't have built in, so I had to make all of those first. Some of it's obvious gameplay stuff, checkpoints, ad spawns, respawn control, but some of it is just from managing the sheer scope of the map, such as culling effects outside of the currently active area. Making systems for all of these things is a lot of upfront work, but ultimately it's a lot easier than handling them manually. Not that I have the budget to spare in redundancy anyway. With that out of the way, we can talk about the fun stuff, and to make things simple, we're just going to go through the raid in order. I'm going to spoil everything, and this video will double as a guide, so I guess stop watching if you can somehow wrangle enough people to play this.
Dude, we might
Tell me
play
if you liked it. The raid begins at the bottom of the ring, where the team does a bit of low-gravity platforming to get launched through a hull breach. The raid is set on the corner of the shard for a few reasons. Setting it near the breakpoint lets me lean into the Forerunner hex look that Infinite's assets accommodate the best, while emphasizing the interesting aspect of the setting, and focusing on the area around the edge lets me get away with some neat visual tricks that I couldn't have otherwise. Most of all, it makes the raid seem larger and more concrete as a space. Starting beneath the shard lets you get a full view of the sun below, grounding you in its surroundings and making the journey through it feel more significant. Physicality, you remember? Once you're inside the ring, you fight some initial groups of enemies as you work your way up to the first encounter. So, the generators. This is the simplest of the raid's encounters to ease players in, but it still requires a decent amount of coordination. The goal is simple. Disable an energy gate blocking the rim's exit. The gate is connected to 3 generators around the arena, all of which must be destroyed to proceed. Normal weapons won't get the job done though, you need something bigger. After a bit of ad clear, 2 hunters will spawn. Once those are dead, a chieftain will appear near the exit, and when the chieftain dies, he drops a ball. This is the targeting beacon. When it's picked up, a reticle will appear in the air and begin tracking towards the ball. If the two meet, a lock is acquired, and a giant laser will strike the beacon, annihilating it and everything nearby. Try not to be holding it when that happens. The good news is that the laser is powerful enough to destroy the generators. The bad news is that the reticle is faster than you are, so the team has to play a bit of hot potato. 3 or 4 people need to form a chain from the beacon spawn to the generator they're targeting, so that when the ball is picked up, they can pass it between each other and beat the reticle. How exactly you want to arrange everybody is up to you. If you screw up and the beacon is destroyed without hitting a generator, another chieftain will immediately spawn. Otherwise, the whole song and dance restarts from the beginning. Of course, there are also plenty of enemies to deal with. At first it's not so rough, but once the first generator has been destroyed, more spawners will activate to spice things up. When the second is down, you get a special delivery. Infected Spartans. I set up a system that lets me handle the multiplayer bots like campaign AI, and they crop up from time to time throughout the raid. Most notably in the last encounter, but, well, you'll see. Once all 3 generators are toast and the doors open, you're free to continue towards second encounter.
Wait, so one of the Spartans can become infected and will kill the other teammates? Or are they still good? No, oh, it's an AI bot. No shit.
At first it's not so rough, but once the first generator has been destroyed, more spawners will activate to spice things up.
Okay.
When the second is down, you get a special delivery. Infected Spartans. I set up a system that lets me handle the multiplayer bots like campaign AI, and they crop up from time to time throughout the raid. Most notably in the last encounter, but, well, you'll see. Once all 3...
Dude, that's wild. So, oh my God, hold up. Just think about that. Imagine a future raid where in the middle of the encounters, dredgens spawn in and you have to kill them. Dude, that would be dope. Dude, how does Microsoft not look at this? What is it, Microsoft Studios now? It's no longer called 343, right? Microsoft Studios, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong. Excuse me, Halo Studios. How does Halo Studios not add raids to their future rollout of content? You know what I mean? They've got everything here, obviously, to build, unless you just want to depend on your community to build stuff like this. But that's because Destiny's a looter shooter. That is true. How do you incentivize people in Halo to play? Dude, why not drip? Hold up. Why not just tie some drip items and some skins as raid rewards? Just cosmetics.
Generators are toast and the doors open, you're free to continue towards second encounter. Okay, this is where things get interesting. This is the strangest encounter of the raid and was probably the most fun to make. Everybody needs to get across this giant chasm, but there's no bridge. The start room has a couple of teleporters, each leading to a control room overlooking the gap. These rooms contain several buttons that build a bridge across the chasm. Both contain buttons to add forward pieces and reset the bridge, but only the left side can make left turns and only the right side can make right turns. Only 3 pieces can be active at a time and any more will decay away, so 2 players have to work together to make the bridge while it is being crossed. Once a group crosses, they are marked, which allows them to travel between the exit room and the control rooms using teleporters on that side. I know this kind of violates the no magic buffs rule, but it's pretty straightforward and it's a lot nicer than the alternative. To complicate things further, the exit is defended by skimmers randomly spread throughout the maze, and the last bridge is disabled until all of them are dead. The number of them increases each crossing, and they have HUD markers for players operating the bridge controls. On top of that, ads constantly spawn to the control rooms and push towards the operator, so they're under threat as well. Also, Iritus is trying to infect you, so you're on the clock.
Ooh.
Good luck. It's a lot to take in. The encounter doesn't actually begin until someone starts crossing, so you have some time to experiment and strategize. Here's the intended approach for 6 people. Split the fire team into groups of 2. We'll say they're Group A, Group B, and Group C. Groups A and B head into each of the control rooms while C mounts up on a warthog. In the control rooms, one player operates the controls while the other defends them. For simplicity, have the operators agree on which one of them is leading to avoid confusion. Be sure to tell the crossing players where to look for skimmers. They can't see those nav markers, so they could use the help. Once they're crossed, have Group C switch places with Groups A or B. Let's just say A in this case. So now Groups B and C are in the control rooms while A is crossing. When Group A is clear, have them swap out with Group B. Eventually, everybody will be marked, so both groups left in the control rooms can simply leave through the teleporters and meet at the exit, finishing the encounter. So, as you can tell, this one gets pretty frantic. There's a lot happening all the time, and everybody needs to play their part. And that's why I like it! My favorite raid encounters are ones where you're jumping around roles and always have a job to do, and I think this one really gets that feeling down. It's also very Halo feeling. Looping in the classic Warthog driver gunner combo and focusing on an obviously physical problem gives it a very distinct vibe compared to Destiny's encounters. But at this point the team needs a bit of a detox, so it's time to slow down and take it easy.
Dude, tell me a Forge mode in Destiny wouldn't be amazing for this community. Imagine if Destiny players had the ability, and we talk about like maps and stuff like that, you know, making more Crucible maps, whatever. But imagine if Destiny players had the ability to make their own raid. And imagine if Bungie was like, listen, we can only give you one raid a year from us and an epic raid, but we have community-driven raids that will, one of those, whichever one gets voted on, will be the one that drops at some point during the year. That would be another 100 gigabytes of storage. You know what? I've actually had the conversation with some folks at Bungie about a Forge mode. And one of the individuals that I talked to, I said, hey, would a Forge mode ever happen inside of Destiny? Because I feel like it would be wonderful to have community-driven content. And he immediately replied, yeah, I was actually the one who made Forge back in Halo. And I said, wow, okay, so could you make it for Destiny? Of which he replied, absolutely. We can make that for Destiny. It would completely work for Destiny. There's nothing about OG Forge mode that would not work for Destiny. And of course, I mean, you'd have different parts and different things assets you would utilize. But then I go, that sounds great. When can it be done? And this is when I was told that when it comes to stuff like that, some of these individuals have to pull teeth just to get the simplest things implemented. And I hope Bungie changes this up soon. They need to. They need it for their game, whether we're staying in D2 or going into D3. I give you an example. The shooting range, which is a no-brainer addition to Destiny. It should have always been in the game, but we didn't get into this past year. It's crazy, at least from what I heard, the amount of teeth that Bungie had to fucking pull with leadership to get something as simple as a shooting range added to the game. Because the whole thought process around it is, what is the return on this? What is the return on a shooting range? Think how long it took them to make 3 PvP maps for us. Years. Took them years to make us 3 PvP maps. And maybe one of them was kind of good. You know what I mean? Dude, save yourself some time. Have the community would gladly cook some shit up. And then if the community cooks some shit up that sucks, like if the community makes a PvP map and it sucks, well, they're not going to roast Bungie for it. They're going to roast the community member. If I made a raid and the raid was terrible, you guys would let me know within fucking 2.5 minutes. Y'all would be like, this raid is Aztecross. How could you ever think of this? Never be a designer. Never be a developer. Never even think or conceive an idea that involves you creating a raid. And that's great. I think that's completely fine. It's not toxic. If it's a shit raid, it's a shit raid. Oh my God, dude. Oh my God. We would create an encounter where you had to lick your teammate's ass. All right. We would figure it out. We would place a buff right here, right there. And you had to manually go down in there. You know what I mean? To get that buff. It's bonding time. It's bonding with your team.
Who likes platforming?
Oh, no.
Everybody gets unlimited repulsors for a laid-back traversal section, where the team works through an underground ravine. The stakes are low, Undercover is playing, it's just a chill vibe. This was mainly inspired by King's Fall, where there's a similar journey before the final encounters, though in this case, you're doing the launching. Having some downtime like this is just nice for pacing. At the end, everybody gathers in a comically slow friendship elevator. I was gonna make this quick, but it's just funnier this way. It should come as no surprise to any level designers in the audience that this elevator is, in fact, not real and just teleports you to an identical one somewhere else. But it feels real, and that's what matters. The elevator spits you out in a cave on the surface. It's time to assault the tower. You need to get this power seed from the starting cave to the top floor of the base, which is way over there. And it's not a simple trip. First of all, you need to get to the tower. Sure, you could just get in the hog and drive, but, well, here's the flaw. The laser system is back, and this time it wants you dead. Instead of targeting a beacon, the laser will simply go after anybody caught outside, and you are not outrunning.
Oh, shit!
But you do have a trick up your sleeve. This mongoose, which has a masking field around it. Stick with the goose, and you'll make it. You can save yourself up until the moment the laser fires, so even if it has a lock on you, you're not completely doomed. This section may not be long, but you know I had to sneak some kind of Warthog run in here. And if this is reminding you of Queen's Walk from Last Wish...
Yes!
Yeah. Of course, you can't just waltz right up the tower either. Besides...
Dude, this guy's legit, man. Bungie, if you're hiring anybody for the raid team, just saying.
It's a huge number of enemies. Each area of the tower is blocked off by energy gates. These are powered by giant fusion coils on the buildings around it. Blow up the right coil, and the gate will stay down until it recovers. Problem is, blowing up the wrong coil will disable the field around the mongoose and most likely doom everybody outside, and which coil each gate is connected to is randomized every attempt. You can tell which need to be destroyed by symbols on the terminals along the way up. That's the Covenant numbering system, in case you were curious. Makes it easy to refer to them by name. Here's a map of the symbols on the outside if you need it. Phantoms drop enemy vehicles outside over time, and Iratus is trying to infect you again, so you'd better get a move on. This is another encounter with a lot of moving parts, but it's not so hard once you get the hang of it. You can theoretically get by with only one person outside, but they're gonna want some backup, so I suggest splitting the fire team evenly between inside players and outside players. The inside group can pile into the Razorback with the Power Seed, while one of the outside players drives a Mongoose and the rest hop on the Warthog. Split up once you reach the tower, and do your best. The last gate is powered by 2 fusion coils, and they respawn in 30 seconds, so be ready to race between.
Les! We need to run this raid. Les, call the squad. Dude, the fact that this guy made this as a one person inside of just a Forge mode. I mean, I'm not saying that the Forge mode isn't advanced, but I mean, this is all just being done with in-game assets like this. It's crazy, brother. It's fucking crazy.
Them. You're good to go once the seed is planted on the top floor. Get everybody up to the teleporter and prepare for the grand finale. Fourth encounter, the big boss fight. This one is a whole can of worms. So, Iratus. He's taken up residence in a Sentinel combat frame. You may think, hey, isn't that just Adjutant Resolution from the campaign? Of course not, that's Iratus. Says right there, totally different guy. Please ignore everything he ever says. Okay, in all seriousness, I kinda had to make do on this one. Making a new enemy from scratch was never gonna be viable, so I had to repurpose a boss from the campaign. Adjutant Resolution was the only real option on that front, and unfortunately, working with him is just the worst. He kind of works on different rules from the other AI. Different, much worse rules. For example, he's the only AI that can function properly while airborne. Great, that means I can handle all of his movement through scripting. Except small problem, he spontaneously explodes after a while. Turns out this is because he cannot go without his security nav mesh for approximately 2 minutes. Works perfectly fine up until then, but then he just dies. Cool, that's fine. I can just give him a dummy one to float on. Only took me a few hours to figure that one out. Except, second problem, now he just fires his laser at world origin forever, and because he's invincible while doing that, he also cannot be killed. Splendid! Many hours of investigation later, I figure out this is because he has no idea how to handle Spartan bots regardless of team. I keep the boss in this little playpen outside of the map when they're not in use, and most of the time he'd immediately try to target one of them and then just lock up forever. Very elegant solution. During the damage phase, teleport all of the bots 1,000 kilometers outside of the map every 2 seconds to force a respawn and break his focus on them. It's fine! This is fine! But, setting technical problems aside, he does work well for this. As far as what this is, oh boy.
I gotta say, man, my man's finding solutions. I mean, look, you gotta hand it to him. He's finding damn solutions. It just works.
A lot of things are gonna happen at once, so just bear with me here. The encounter begins when players emerge on the roof of the tower. Iratus roams around the front of the tower while ads spawn at the back and loop around into the arena from the sides. This thing is also here, we'll get to it. Iratus has a fancy shield which makes him invincible, so the mechanics phase is about breaking the shield. A bit after the fight begins, a phantom will drop a chieftain at the front of the arena. Kill him and he'll drop a targeting beacon, just like in first encounter. But if you try and hit Iratus with the laser, he'll just override the firing sequence because nothing can ever be that simple. Gonna have to do something about that. Meanwhile, you have other problems. Early in the encounter, you'll be warned that an ally will be infected. Now is a good time to spread out. Shortly after, one random player will suddenly be replaced with a special infected zombie. The zombie is very slow, but wanders around trying to kill people with his energy sword. It has very high defense and will wipe the team if it's killed, so somebody should distract it if possible. Whoever was infected will find themselves in the spooky dark place. This is in their mind or something. Don't worry about it. While you're here, you have an infinite ammo bulldog who will be endlessly assaulted by regular zombies.
What?
It's like a match of infection, basically. For the time being, this player just needs to survive. If they die,
Dude,
their revive orb will drop back
awesome.
outside, the special zombie representing them will disappear, and another player will be infected in their stead shortly after. The ingredient that ties all of this together is that weird terminal from earlier. While the laser system is attempting to target the beacon, 4 random symbols will appear on this screen. These are the same symbols from third encounter. The cursor in the middle can be moved around the grid using these 2 buttons. The left moves it up, and the right moves it right. The cursor loops around the grid when it reaches the edge, and moving the cursor over a symbol selects it. 3 of these symbols need to be selected, but 1 is a trap that will kill the operator and reset the minigame. To identify which symbols are safe, the operator needs to work with the infected player. There are 3 screens in the spooky dark place, and each shows a symbol that the operator needs to select. Bear in mind that this all needs to happen between the beacon being picked up and the laser firing at it.
Dude, someone hired this fucking man. I mean, I was already impressed. Someone hired this fucking man. This is incredible. I don't know where he needs. I mean, Bungie hire him. Halo Studios hire him. Halo Studios make a fucking raid.
The minigame is reset every time the laser comes online and shuts down when it fires. Therefore, the remaining players need to juggle the beacon between themselves to keep the reticle from reaching it. 2 people is just barely enough to do this with a full team, though for this encounter the reticle gets slower the fewer players you have. So essentially, 1 player is infected, 1 player is operating, 2 players are juggling the beacon, and the remaining 2 are focused on ad clear and distracting the infected player's zombie, and all of this is happening simultaneously. That is a lot to keep track of, but it's simpler than it looks once you get the hang of it, especially because you can retry each part as many times as you need to. Once the operator selects all 3 symbols, the minigame locks up and the team acquires manual fire control. The laser is now connected to this button in the arena and will only fire if it is pressed. You should let the reticle lock onto the beacon now. When everybody is ready, somebody throws the beacon at Iratus and the operator presses the fire button as it reaches him. Iratus can't override your manual control, so the laser will work and bring his shield down. That also frees the infected player. The damage phase is much simpler. Point your gun at him and shoot! I recommend targeting the bottom arms first, since those are used for his missile attack, which is easily the scariest thing he has. When you've dealt a third of his health, his shield will go back up and it's time for another mechanics phase.
Nice.
Following phases are mostly the same. More dangerous adds will join in after the first damage phase, but that's about it. When you hit the third and final damage phase, Iratus enters his final stand and the gloves come off. There's no timer, but Iratus has better defense than usual, and he'll randomly target players with a laser. If the warning circle shows up around you, start running. On the bright side, the laser is as fatal to the other enemies as it is to you, and it gives the fight a nice climactic finish. Blow him out of the sky and you've finished the raid. I'm very, very happy with how Iratus turned out. He was my biggest concern going in. I mean, how on earth do you make a proper raid boss in Forge? But the encounter ended up being the best kind of chaos. The random player infection is a fun and thematically appropriate gimmick, and it forces everybody to take rolls on the spot instead of settling into one. And it all works! You have no idea how long it took me to make it work. There's so much stuff going on and overlapping, and it's a nightmare, and it works! It works! Anyway, that's the raid. Honestly, I'm amazed I actually finished the thing. You probably noticed how the level of detail fell off a cliff around a third encounter, but that's not because I was lazy, it's because making it more detailed was impossible. Like, I cannot understate just how close I cut it. The budget wound up with maybe a couple dozen objects to spare. I'm using almost the entire canvas in every direction, and Forge is very unhappy with me.
So for Forge mode, is it you have a certain amount of pieces that you can use? Like you have like a limit on how many assets you can use? There's an asset count? Gotcha. I mean, dude, he's got 4 encounters though. That's incredible. 4 encounters.
If I had even 1 iota more ambition than I did, it would have been a train wreck. And needless to say, there is still some level of jank. Try as I might, I ultimately don't have much QA capacity. But in the end, I did it. It's a complete raid, it feels legit, it looks as legit as it could have, and most importantly, it's just really fun to play through. Which gets me thinking again about where raids could sit in the broader Halo franchise if it decided to go down that route. Gameplay-wise, well, you already know what I want. The tricky part is everything around it, and honestly, I'm not sure how that would work. Raids maintain a healthy population because they're fun, sure, but let's be honest here. The loot is pretty important.
Yep.
You gotta have something good to lure people over the initial hump of getting a group together and making that time commitment. The obvious route is an armor set, because Halo fans eat those up. Grant a part of it for each encounter with the helmet at the end, and on replays, just give them currency instead. It'd have to be a lot to make it feel worth pursuing, so I think it'd be fair to limit the really big payouts to your first run of a week or something like that. The other sticking point is development time. Raids take a lot of manpower to make. Trust me, I would know. And even in the best case, they only appeal to a small section of the player base. Estimates vary, but it's probably safe to say that only 10 to 15% of Destiny players have ever cleared a raid. That is difficult to justify for a series that, practically speaking, doesn't really need them. Considering these games have been struggling to meet content demand as it is, all sound reason says that investing in raids makes no sense whatsoever. But even so, I kinda want them. Halo doesn't have anything that provides this kind of dedicated co-op experience, and I think that's leaving a lot on the table. And even though the series forgoes mechanical progression, having special extra difficult content with unique rewards isn't even new to it. Consider the Vidmaster challenges in Halo 3. Several of those were even harder and few people did them, but just having something like that exist with the promise of a unique reward at the end added a lot of texture to the game as a whole. It's something you can want that you have to go out of your way for. There's something special about that these days, and so many cosmetics are just bought with real money. That's all I've got, but in the event anybody from Bungie or Halo Studios or really anywhere happens to be watching this, I'm looking for a job. I do level design.
Hire this man! Honestly, I wish I could make some with him. I got no development knowledge. I can't code shit. I don't know what we would make. Les, get with this man. Y'all make a game. Les, get with this man. Cook up something. Look, Les. I want Destiny and RuneScape to have a baby. You and this guy, y'all could cook it together, and I'll come playtest it. And look, I want my playtest area to be the throne from Game of Thrones, and then with a nice ultra-wide monitor directly in front of it. And that's where I'll do my playtesting. Standing desk, of course. A cross raid would be all ad clear. You know what? If I made a fucking raid, you guys say that shit, I will overwhelm the fuck out of you with ads. I'm talking ads would not stop. I'm talking like waves would pour out constantly. Fucking just out of every damn crevice, every fucking crack. I'm talking, dude, you talk shit about ad clear, brother, I will have an entire continent full of ads. It would be a true horde mode. We would make that shit a fucking horror show.
Programming made this thing. Entry-level hiring ain't doing so hot right now, so just put a good word in, maybe? For the rest of you, links are in the description, including a full playthrough. Give it a try, let me know what you think, have fun. I'm gonna go work on my actual game now.
Good shit, man.
But first, credits Q&A! Only got one question this time. Have you tried out Bungie's marathon games? I sure have. I like them a lot, especially narratively. If you want a fun and terrible way to replay Marathon 1, try running it in co-op with as many people as you can. It's really easy to do with the LF1 port, and it's hilarious. That campaign isn't designed for more than one person at all, so you keep fighting over weapons and team killing each other because the hallways are super claustrophobic. By the end, it just turns into like a Stalingrad situation where someone's always following you to take your guns the second you die. I highly recommend it.
This guy's good, man. We're gonna have to drop the subscription right here. Madman Epic. So go show him some love. And Bungie, somebody's gonna hire this guy. I'm just saying. I'd pick him up. Obviously, he's got a mind for it for sure. And designing good encounters is so important. I think someone who was fantastic at Bungie, who designed great encounters, was actually Joe Blackburn, the old Destiny 2 director. And so he played a big role in designing multiple raids, and that was his background. Man, this was such an excellent video. Thank you for this, dude. Really, really. I think at some point this week, I will gather the squad and we will attempt to do your raid. We will put ourselves to the test. And man, I would love to see you at Bungie, dude. I don't know if Halo Studios is ever going to make like a raid, but I think Bungie could definitely use you, man.
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.